This is not a Cobra knot paracord bracelet. What it is a buckled quick release paracord bracelet that can go from your wrist to a handful of usable cord in just seconds. And what's great is if you keep the cord intact, it's really easy to tie back onto the bracelet cord. Shout out to RS Paracord for teaching me this one. Let's get into the how. In terms of cordage, I've got some OD green for the bracelet core and orange for my main weave, as you've seen. We're going to start off by making the 4-strand contained core. From the midpoint of my OD green strand, I'm going to fold it in half and then pass the midpoint through the front of my top buckle, and then pass the running ends through the bite on the other side and form a cow hitch. Then move the cow hitch to the left side of the buckle, and with the cord that's now on the right, you're going to pass it through the front of the buckle once again and have that end pass over its own standing end and pull the cord through. Push the hitch knots to the left side, and then using the same cord on the right, we're going to pass it through the back of the buckle and then pull that end under the loop you just made on the front. We now have our first double cow hitch side, and you'll have to even up the cords at this point. So if one side is longer, just work the cord through the knots to the other side. We're going to attach our top buckle to the jig and bring the cords down. And with the right cord, I'm going to pass it through the front of the bottom buckle, and then move the cord to the right and then over its own standing end to the left. From there, pass the strand through the back of the buckle to the front and then under its own standing end to form the hitch knot. Notice the running end is on the left side. Now repeat the same process on the other side but mirrored. Pass the left strand through the front of the buckle and then to the left. Then bring it back over its own standing end, through the buckle from the back to the front, and then under the standing end loop. Pull tight and form the knot. Let's move back up to the top, and from here with a lacing needle, I'm going to pass both running ends through the loop in between the two hitch knots at the top buckle. Notice both strands coming out the back. After both strands have been passed through, snip the cords, leaving a small amount next to where the cords came out of. And then melt the ends with a lighter and press down on the ends to lock them in place. We now have our contained 4-strand core. And with our main weaving cord, we're going to place the midpoint on the front of the core strands. And with the right side strand, we're going to make an overhand loop behind the core strands. From there, with the left strand, we're going to form a bite and pass it through the overhand loop and over the core strands. Then we're going to close that overhand loop around the bite and firm up the knot. After that, we then form a bite with the right strand, and it's going to pass through the front of that previous bite and then go behind the core strands and to the left side. Pull the left strand to then close the now previous bite around the new one. We're now back to the left side, and again form a new bite, pass it through the back of the previous one and then over the front of the core strands. Pull the previous bite closed and then repeat the same pattern as before. So on the right side, the bite always passes through the front of the previous bite and then behind the core strands. And on the left side, the bite always passes through the back of the previous bite and in front of the core strands. So continue this pattern, making your way down the core strands to form the bracelet. What you can do to pack as much paracord onto the bracelet is to push up on the knots every couple of knots or so to get as many on there as possible. Once you've made your way down, stop when the last knot on the front reaches the bottom. And from there, the right side cord simply passes through the bite and then pull that bite closed around the last strand. To finish on each side, we're going to tie double overhand knots. On the right, make 2 loops and then pass the end through the loops from the left to the right, pull tight. Then on the other side, do the same, 2 loops, and then pass the end through and pull tight. These knots make it easier to deploy the bracelet and also retie it back together if you don't end up cutting the cord. At this point, you can snip off any excess cord that's at the tail end of those overhand knots, and try to keep the overhand knots cinched as close to the bracelet as possible. And to undo the bracelet, you simply push the overhand knot that's on the presentation side of the bracelet under the last bite to free it, and then from there, pull the overhand knots in opposite directions, and our paracord is freed in seconds. So this was just one of a few ways to make a quick release paracord bracelet, more of which you can find here.